Okay, welcome back. Today it's time to deal with some of the more serious things. By this stage, I think you no doubt know about the layoffs. What I want to talk about and focus on in today's video is the impact specifically on World of Warcraft, the broader context, and basically I've seen so many questions and fears around the internet that I feel it'll be useful if I answer. I mean, take the top of Reddit. WoW's lore team repeatedly hit hard by layoffs. That caused quite a lot of worry. I've seen people worried about if this will impact the roadmap or the expansions. Well, there's a lot to get into on the lore side of things that reveals some of the structure of Blizzard. And as for the roadmap, for what it's worth, this is what Holly said. Our roadmap and plans for classic and modern aren't changing. This team is here for our players and each other, even in grief. Love them, love you all. So that's the word from her. Now, my team have been going very deep into this story. I've also had interesting emails, so I've compiled everything that I know. I hope you find today's video to be interesting and to be useful, and a big thank you to today's sponsor for supporting my team's work. Squarespace.com/Bellular Gaming. Now, the last time we chatted about them, I talked about Biosite's Fluid Engine and Blueprint and how they come together to make building your online presence even easier. But they've got so many other features. Squarespace also helps you run your business. They have their fantastic email newsletter tools. They can handle your digital and physical e-commerce. So imagine if you want to do some merchandise. Well, you can get set up with their partner Printful. You can build your designs there. You can bring them over to Squarespace and you're done. Now, what if you want to go a little bit bigger, right? And you're doing your own merch? Well, Squarespace can integrate with all the different fulfillment companies. So if you get an order on your Squarespace site, it will automatically go through to your fulfillment center, saving you so much time. They do Squarespace memberships, where you can do free and paid memberships. They have their new course tool that, of course, lets you turn your knowledge into income. The user experience is just awesome for all of this too. They even have appointments and invoicing tools just to help you run your business. So if you're physical, digital, or a mix of all of those things, Squarespace has got the tools to help you stay on top of your business. And in 2024, they're going to be shipping Squarespace payments. And for me, I always love to see a company ship updates and build their products more. That's exactly what they're doing. I've been really impressed with how they've gone. So you can build your site for free today, right? You can play with their editor, have a lot of fun doing that. And when you're ready to send it live, if you use code Bellular Gaming, you'll get 10% off an annual plan. Okay, I'm going to kick it off with the new president. Ybarra is out. Joanna Faris is in. To TLDR her experience, right? She graduated from Harvard in 2003, did just shy of a 12-year stint at ESPN, where she worked her way up to the VP level. She then hopped over to Activision to be the commissioner for the Call of Duty League. Then she became the general manager of Call of Duty, and that actually brings us to now. The first many of us heard of her was the letter that she published. Honestly, looking at that letter, I think it's perfectly reasonable, especially given all the context. As for herself, it looks like she worked her way up from ESPN, which, you know what, that actually is going to require work. So that will show, I think, a level of core competency. Now, one thing that happened here is people, they looked at Mike Ybarra, they saw him running M+, and thought, oh, look, it's our gamer president-in-chief. Well, a bit of a reality there. Ybarra was not popular within Blizzard. This is something that most of us who, are in and around the whispery circles, this is something we've known for ages. I've heard it from multiple people. Also, I've heard he did not resign. He was shown the door, and I've heard that from a few people. I mean, hell, at BlizzCon, Ybarra said to Jason Schreier, I believe, "You'll have to drag me out." This was just him referring to how long he wanted to stay at Blizzard. So obviously, a month and a half later, he gets booted. Something obviously changed. Now, as a leader, I obviously do not have the whole picture, and I'm aware that when you hear from sources, that will always be from a perspective. I will at least say that I think he's been a fairly weak leader, even just remembering the alleged bungling of that Q&A back when he was president of Blizzard. It's the one where he was quoted as saying, "You think that executives are making a lot of money and you aren't? You're living in a myth." Now, that was pretty well sourced and verified by a few different outlets. And look, if you're saying that in a big meeting with your staff when they're concerned, obviously that is a very poor show of leadership. And I think that's made very clear when you see that after 1,900 of his colleagues were laid off, he said on LinkedIn, greatest platform in the world, that he would be taking time to travel the world and wishes to find hyper-growth teams. Yeah. Now look, the president doesn't make the games. The president does president things, executive things. Will Joanna be good at her job? Who knows, but it does seem that she has plenty of experience. It is only right that we give her a chance because of that. And if you're too worried about her Call of Duty DNA, well, her one tweet up on her Twitter account does say that she's recently been into Baldur's Gate 3. Hey, if true, neat. At the very least, and this is something Ibarra didn't do, she has followed, like, all of the Warcraft content creator people. She said she's going into listening mode. So look, even though I imagine that's just a Twitter list that was given to her, maybe it does indicate she wants to look at that Twitter feed, get a sense of the vibes. Who knows? I wish her the best. Her success is our success, is the development staff's success. Now let's talk about them, development staff. The cuts. So customer service, gutted. The existing Microsoft customer service apparatus is kind of filling in that role. QA was also gutted from many studios. I don't have much transparency into things in the WoW team though, insofar as QA goes. But what I would say is WoW will benefit from having a well-established PTR cycle. Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 do not have public test realms. That's probably going to be more rough for those games. As for dev team cuts, the cancel survival game, I'm told, had 250 staff. From what I understand, like 80% of them are essentially gone. It allegedly is less of a redeployment, as was put in the Microsoft memo that kicked off this whole thing, and it is more the team being gutted. Per reports on Twitter, it's very much a sorry, your cell was deleted on the spreadsheet style thing rather than a carefully done, measured process of downsizing. Came as a big surprise to many managers. As in literally managers went into work and received a list that they may be on and a list that, from everything that I've heard, they did not have input in. As for the other games, Overwatch 2 was hit seemingly quite brutally. I've seen a tweet that half the environment art team was cut. I don't know if that's half of that individual's team or half of the broader team. We've also seen cuts to narrative, we've seen some design cuts, and sleuthing through LinkedIn's and tweets, it does appear that the PvE ambitions of the game are perhaps being scaled back a lot, which would make sense, right? Like, you're not going to need as many environment artists if you are focusing on, PvE replayable, like more wave defense stuff, like those events that they do, or just maps, but you're not needing to make large things like Invasion. Certainly when you look at Overwatch Invasion, goddamn, like those maps are pretty big, pretty involved. They'll take quite a lot of a team. Evidently, they don't feel that they need that. As for why, look, PvE is risky. PvP, they're already making money on it, so they're going to cut costs, reduce their risk in a mercenary fashion, lean into what the team is actually doing that's working right now. That's absolutely brutal, but you can see the logic. Think about the profitability of those two prospects. Now, Diablo also saw cuts. They do not appear to be as large. In both cases, though, it's mostly art and production from what I can tell. Either those people are not needed in light of new plans for those games, or Microsoft is planning to outsource, which is a more and more common thing, or they have existing capacity within their wider organization. As for World of Warcraft, then, I know that's one of the things given this channel that you're probably wondering about and are worried about, which is totally, you're right to be worried. Let's get into it. There's been very little noise, astoundingly little, on the core Warcraft development team, like people just saying, tweets that they're gone. I've seen an animator be cut, but if the amount of public tweets is correlating proportionately to the number of layoffs within a game team, World of Warcraft does seem to essentially have nearly completely escaped, as is compared to some of their other properties, which were hit significantly harder. This bit I cannot confirm. It's more saying that World of Warcraft had a very large team, and we haven't heard a lot. Now, what has been cut more is the Historian team. Now, from what I understand, they're not a part of Team 2. They're actually a part of a department called CDev. So technically not WoW dev team, which may actually be a relevant thing because of how different departments could have been treated whenever these cuts were actually being done, considering a lot of this was literally just done on a departmental level. So it seems a team of 5 has been cut down to 2. An ex-employee took to Reddit, one of these historians actually, to detail what their job actually is. And putting a lot of things together that I've also heard, maybe I'll do a video in the future about how WoW's narrative is made. But as for this, the TLDR is they review content, they create resources, and they do consultation. They describe essentially being proactive on things like cinematics and books, but on game content, they are more reactive. Now, what's major to me here is that this is essentially a consultation-based role. Basically, they review things and they assist the dev team, but the dev team are the ones who actually have the authority there. So if a problem is called out, but it's too late to fix, or it's felt to be small, well, it'll just make it into the game. This ex-employee then ends their post by wondering how, now down to 2 people, that historian team will actually cope. Now, you may say, Michael, how hard could it be? Like, you know, I know about the lore, you know about the lore, surely that's a small thing. The thing is, though, the amount of tasks they'll have to do. They're going to be reviewing cinematics, but all cinematics for all content that is being developed across multiple patches and expansions. They will be pulled into meetings all the time about content that is being developed. They have to review some art assets to ensure that things like eye color, tendrils, fingers, all those little details are right, or at least if they're wrong, to flag it so that the dev team know. Then they'll have a raft of book projects. And then creating resources, which is very important. Those are the sorts of resources, say, compiling from across WoW's history, this is what a Harpy looks like, this is what X looks like. That is vitally important for onboarding new staff onto the team. Not that that's been happening for reasons I'll get into fairly shortly. Anyway, I think that this will have an outsized negative impact, but overall, a small one. But it is losing something that, I mean, you could say that it's an optional nice to have. I think in the long run, though, that department's job being done better and better would probably correlate in a game canon that we can all get behind. You can certainly see how development chaos has perhaps made it hard for that team to have a positive impact. Going into his post, he does actually talk about some areas where, you know, they did call things out or, you know, say that something could be a problem, but ultimately it just wasn't really fixed. It was a really interesting post. But there's that. Now, to truly help you grasp how the hammer is falling, I'm going to bring in some context and some research. Why is this happening? Okay, when ZeniMax was acquired, that's the group that also owns, say, Bethesda, there was no large layoff round, right? So here's what I've been able to gather from a few of my own sources and our experience running the news channel that we do. The big thing first. A while ago, Microsoft's original goal was to grow Game Pass. Not at any cost, but they weren't as sensitive to cost. They just wanted growth. My take on that is that it looked like they were trying to concede some console dominance. To my mind, they were essentially acknowledging just how much in the back foot they are with consoles. I mean, the Nintendo Switch, which is a very old thing now, has been outselling the Series X and S. So it seems like they were realizing how behind they were in consoles, against Sony, but wanted to fight back by having cross-device platform dominance with Xbox, Game Pass, all of that. And per multiple sources, this has changed. On the Game Pass front, deals are harder to get than they had been at the past. I know that completely separately to today's story from multiple indie sources and people that I've talked to. That's just the way that it is. I'm going to say no more. But yeah, that's something that's quite known about in dev circles, that they have been really tightening that coin purse, and they've been doing so for a little while now. As for larger titles and the sort of unit economics of things, well, allegedly, the only game that has exceeded Microsoft's expectations for profitability, revenue growth, that sort of thing, is Minecraft, right? Minecraft has been the winner. And that's not really a surprise. Look at their other titles. You've got Halo, Forza, Ghostwire Tokyo, Starfield, Deathloop, which I suppose they got when they, purchased Bethesda, or ZeniMax, also Redfall. Now, there's a few pretty big games in there, right? But no massive hits. And yes, Starfield will have sold well, but it has that rough reception, 62% in Steam. It will not have done as well as it probably should have, especially if you were projecting a good critical and player reception. Then in addition to that, a lot of their longer term bets just haven't paid off yet. You've got the likes of, say, Hellblade 2, you've got Avowed, probably another Elder Scrolls game, you've got the Fable game. They have big projects, but they're on the horizon, and that's probably meant their financials are not as good as they want them to be. And then, of course, the whole Game Pass thing. Their entire, our first-party games are on Game Pass. That whole vibe was there to try to outcompete Sony on value. But the problem is that now, Game Pass is actually stagnant. By January 2022, it was at 25 million subs. Now, merger-related court documents put that at 29 million by October 2022, and then that was put at over 30 million by senior marketing director's LinkedIn, but then that was pulled. And this happened just last September, and when it was pulled, Microsoft said that the official number is 25 million. IGN, though, spoke to an analyst who put it at 33.3 million by the end of 2023, and then just a little while ago, a very experienced analyst in the scene, Matt Piscatella, claimed that growth had flattened. I mean, if you're pushing like 30 million in 2022 and you haven't grown that much, in 2023, well, that's going to look kind of rough. You've got Piscatella, who definitely is in the know, saying that it's flattened. So this public research does align with what I have been hearing from sources and that sort of thing. And what I've directly heard is that it is all from here on out about safe bets. So that is the sort of thing, in my view, that explains why Overwatch 2 PvE is probably being cost controlled to oblivion and why the unannounced survival game was killed. So, cost-insensitive Game Pass growth is out, tighter unit economics are in. As an example, even just looking at Microsoft's financials, they've increased their operating income consistently. They've grown their net profit margin from 31 to 39%. Over the last year, that's not taking into account last night's earnings call. The point there is, though, they've been trying to optimize their stuff. And they're obviously going through a lot of AI-driven growth right now. So yeah, cost-insensitive Game Pass growth is out the window, tighter unit economics are in. When a large company tries to trim down, as an example in 2023, I believe they had 10,000 layoffs, that can only be done in so accurate of a way. We also learned from Phil Spencer's court appearances that the gaming division is expected to operate as a proper, profit and loss positive unit within Microsoft. So yes, Satya and co. do not want him burning money. More broadly, their gaming headcount is quite down anyway because of cuts to 343 Industries and others in 2023. So essentially what's going on here, and it does impact us, is that the corporate owner wants things to be cost controlled. They want to focus on the things that work. My personal worry there, as an example, is I've really enjoyed Age of Empires 4 and Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. We all know that's not the biggest IP in the world, but maybe this newer, only focusing on the safe bets Microsoft wouldn't greenlit those sorts of things. That's just speculation. Overall, though, World of Warcraft is near the definition of a safe bet. As a platform for earning money, they release a store mount, they just get to print. The subscriber base for WoW is actually very healthy. The retention for World of Warcraft is very healthy right now. And this is where it comes down to it being software as a service, well, games as a service. But as an example, if you're running a software as a service business, some of your most important metrics, they're going to be things like churn. And compared to times in the past, probably from BFA onwards, WoW's churn rate seems to be at a historic low. And that means this is doing well, let's get more eyeballs on it and scale it up because it's the safe bet. So to understand this, look, sometimes layoffs are an unavoidable thing. Maybe a company is losing money and it needs to do layoffs or else it'll go under. A last resort. But when you're dealing with a very large corporation like Microsoft, layoffs are not the last resort. They're almost similar to a weightlifter bulking and cutting. They're so large, 22,000 staff in the games division. How do you eliminate just shy of 2,000 positions there, just shy of 10%? How do you do that? Well, I'd say you either do it right, which will take time, or you do it quick. In this case, they did it quick. I know from many sources that managers did not know about this. Sometimes those managers also were booted. This was a surprise. Managers and teams had no input at all. They were given lists of who stays and who goes. A lot of chaos happened there. Now, this is quite rough. This means that the layoffs were, you could say, not optimized. They'll do more damage if they're done bluntly. If a shitty thing's going to happen, we'd probably rather it's done with a scalpel, so that minimum damage to the patient, the team, is done. But in this case, it was more layoffs by, fire some buckshot and I suppose whatever cells of the spreadsheet it lands on, those people go. But also, it creates a culture of fear on the team. That there is this sword just hanging over them. A lack of trust. And most importantly, a lack of control over one's destiny. And that's a really, really core thing. And if you're burnt out at work, there's one of the main reasons why. The current science basically says burnout is actually not as often about how hard a task is, or sometimes even how much work there is, though that can certainly play into it. It is in large part someone's sense of control. So if you have a bunch of work, but you have a strong sense of control over what's going on, you'll probably be able to grit your teeth and get it done. right? That's where you'll shine. But when you have all those sort of rough factors and you don't feel a sense of control, that's when people get hopeless. That's when actual burnout happens, the sort of burnout that can take 6 months to recover and can seriously hurt people. So that's basically the situation here. My overall view, the WoW team has taken damage. It has not taken as much damage as other teams. World of Warcraft is a safe bet as compared to some other projects. That means that it will likely benefit from, I would say, preferential focus. I say that just because it's probably not going to be getting stacks of money, because that's not what Microsoft are doing. But if they're downsizing some things and they're putting a focus on what works, then that probably just further increases the importance of World of Warcraft. Okay, that's the situation. Obviously, like, look, on a personal level, this stuff goddamn sucks. People I know have been impacted by this. Like, EU community just seems to be gone, from what I could tell, going around Twitter, which, I mean, is literally annoying, but I think far more importantly, like, is actually really, really sad. Like, I mean, yeah, those people, like, have helped us, have taken care of us, helped organize flights to BlizzCon, like, they've been great, and, they know what's up, so it is just so sad, that, I mean, yeah, this whole situation goddamn sucks. Now I hope that anyway this video has helped you understand what is going on and why. Okay, that's it for today's video. More to follow. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.